This week in the first video of the Quake 2 how-to series, we kick off with sound effects. I also present to you chicken and potatoes, so let the video begin.
Hello! Sorry for the crazy camera angle, I'm kind of trying to rush this cooking expedition. What I have today is some taters and some chicken. I'll just throw some crazy stuff together and we'll see what we can come up with.
There are three areas of sound within Quake 2. Player sounds, environment sounds, and general effects sounds. All sounds typically have a sample rate of 22 kHz, are normally mono, and are 16-bit. Sounds are saved as WAV files. You know what isn't saved as WAV files? Chicken. Chicken is not saved as WAV files. The voice of the chicken, but not the actual chicken. Anyone who tells you otherwise, they are wrong. Correct them. You will have achieved your bonus points for the day.
Next we're going to be covering them with salt and pepper and just coat them really well, and we're going to put them in the oven. So we preheat the oven to 400 degrees. This is going to go in there for about 15 minutes. Alright, and while we're doing that, we're going to just set the potatoes, because I was going to make twice baked potatoes. Look at my side potato! What we're going to do with this is we're going to coat it well with olive oil. And this is also going to be at 400 degrees right alongside of it. It's going to be for an additional 30 minutes after the 15. So we're going to start with a 30-minute timer after we take the chicken out.
Before doing any sound creation, we always start with a concept in our heads about what it is we're trying to achieve. With sound, there is a theme we're going after. Get it fixed in your head and let it be your shining beacon. For example, if the character is the lemming and we want him to be loud and obnoxious, we obviously shouldn't use any subtle sounds, but rather screaming, irritating sounds, because that's clearly what lemmings sound like. Loud, irritating midgets of chaos.
Oh no!
Alright, while the chicken's going, you want to mix in a bowl 1 tablespoon of butter, 6 tablespoons of honey, zest of lemon, and 1 tablespoon of juice. Mix it all into a bowl. You're going to use half the mixture to coat the chicken once it comes out in 15 minutes. What you're going to do is you're going to throw it back in for another 15 minutes, and then you're going to take it out and put it covered in some thyme, and then you're going to cook it for another 15 minutes. So 2 15 minutes, thyme on both sides. Ah, it smells wonderful. You can't smell it, can you? So once again, I failed to get fresh thyme, so we're just going to use regular thyme. Sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle. Who has the time? Well, I do, actually.
If the environment is to be ominous and foreboding, we look for low, slow-moving audio. Of course, that's open to interpretation, as high-pitched samples can also be nerve-wracking. And of course, effect sounds simply should be accurate to what they are depicting. Much of the mod sounds aren't all that different sometimes from original variants, and simply can take small tweaks. The programs I have used are Voyager Wave Editor, mostly back in the 90s, Audacity, and more recently Cool Edit Pro. On occasion, I'll use FL Studio to do something quirky. Most of these operate the same way, where we are presented with a WAV file to mess with, and then a host of tools to apply to it and achieve what we want.
Then throw it back in for another 15 minutes. Okay, the potato's about to come out. The beauty of a twice baked potato is after you take the potato out there, you can really mix it with really whatever you want, so long as it's potatoes. I mean, we wouldn't necessarily mix it with vodka. I'm not going to mix it with vodka today. The way I'm going to mix it with is the sour cream. I'm going to mix it with a little Parmesan, a little sprinkled cheese, and some butter. It's right there. So what you do is you carve out all the potato material, put it into a pan, and then you stuff it back in the potato, and usually I texturize the top of it with a fork, and it just turns out really nice. Throw it back in there for about 20 minutes or so, and it's good times. Okay, what I do with twice baked potatoes as far as the actual cutting is when you cut it, you don't cut quite halfway. You're actually cutting a little above that. See, right there. And that's what you're looking for. Carve out of both sides. Also, while you're doing this, try to keep the integrity of the potato as much as possible, so you really don't have to scrape out every little bit of potato. What we're doing is we are trying to put the potato back in this after we do the mixing. See, that's alright. Now, one of the things that I learned from some guy online is that for this part that you cut off, put that inside. It actually creates somewhat of a platform and lets the food kind of pop out of it when you put it back in there.
For sounds, I choose 3 techniques. The first, if I'm not releasing the mod and not making money on it, and likely just for myself and buddies, I'll just use a sound from my collections and plug it in. The second, if the bass sound is close, I'll just tweak that bass sound within the editor. Sometimes this editing is simple, but it can lead to really off-the-wall, unintended effects that can be used for other projects. This method I often describe as finger painting with sound. Observe this segment of editing and hear all the variations you can achieve from one sample.
Now, I wasn't real specific on how much of each of these ingredients you're supposed to add, and that's going to leave it up to you. This is the Choose Your Own Adventure segment of the cooking. And if you have a mixer, you really want to use that for this part. It'll be a lot faster, a little bit more efficient. Since I am too unfortunate to have a mixer for whatever reason, I'm going to apply
Power stirring.
Yeah, you definitely want to make sure you get all the lumpy parts down. You want to make this very creamy, very smooth. And if you have any extra left over, you can actually save that, cook it for another day. You can actually put it back in here and cook it along with it. I usually don't put in too much stress in fitting it all back in the potato. And when you actually have the potato here, what I do is use a fork, and what you do is you can texturize it like this. And I'll give it this nice, using texture on the top of it when it cooks and when it comes out. That's it. See? How about that? Alright, then it goes back in the oven for another 20 minutes.
The third technique involves creating sound from scratch, called Foley. This can be really fun but difficult as you have to hear a sound in your head that hasn't been made yet, then reverse engineer that sound into often common household items that could possibly make that sound. Ideally, you want to make the sound from the raw sample, but we can also gloss over it with some editing to fine-tune what we need. Playing with sound is a lot of fun, and can sometimes be all the editing you need in Quake 2 to have a good time.
And the chicken is ready. Just drizzle the rest of the stuff all over the thing. Mix it up really well. Try to turn them over, because we're going to add one more layer of thyme on top of all of this. And this goes back in for its final 15-minute journey. And the time is nigh. Now, something to know with these things that I may have to adjust the time on this, and I'll tell you at the end of the video if they end up being too dry. It's a big thing with chicken, is it's very easy to overcook these things. And the taters. Voila! Of course, on the subject of drying them out, be sure to spoon over whatever juice is still available. What is that? Over top of the rest of the chicken. There's probably evidence that it probably is overcooked, but I'm sure we'll live. Maybe, no. Thanks for joining me for chicken, potatoes, and sound effects in Quake 2, and I'll see you next week. Don't forget to subscribe, like, leave some comments if you like. Let's see if this turned out pretty well. It's actually not bad, but you might want to take off 5 minutes off of each of the cooking times. Temperature for chicken and potatoes, and adjusted time to make this a little less dry right here. And I'll see you next week for textures and images in Quake 2. And a mystery food.